Denmark's attitude towards colonies and colonization is very different compared to other colonial empires. Hey Slavic Vikings, and welcome to a video where I will exemplify and showcase many different colonies of Denmark and show you how Denmark lost its empire, or not all of it as it finds out, since it has still colonies nowadays. Denmark's attitude towards colonization is very different than other colonial empires, since it is much more pragmatic than ideological. Denmark didn't have some grand ambitions about the global empire like the British, let's say, for example. Instead, they saw it as much more useful possessions that could be sold or manipulated whenever they needed so. And I will give examples of how Denmark lost its major colonial empires around the world in this video. A quick reminder that the subscribe button exists right below this video, and let me know what you think about colonialism. Do you think colonialism is good? Is neo-colonialism acceptable? And a quick reminder, another reminder, that I have a playlist on my channel with many other history videos that I believe you will enjoy. So go to my channel and click on the playlist to see other history videos of mine. Denmark has a very long history of colonization. It is one of the first countries on earth to start colonizing other countries. For example, it colonized the Faroe Islands in the 9th century. The 9th century, for some perspective, is years where Poland didn't even exist yet. Okay, quick correction. Norway actually colonized the Faroe Islands and then gave it to Denmark a bit later. But Norway and Denmark is basically the same, so what's the difference? So Denmark actually had colonies in India, and that being Tranquebar, or nowadays known as Tarangambadi. And it sold it, or basically sold it, more like ceded it to the British in 1845 for a very small sum of money to the British, because Danish just didn't see India as a strategic, vital location anymore for the Danish Empire. Denmark basically decided to focus more on other parts of its empire, so it just sold this small territory to the British. And only 5 years later, it sold the Danish Gold Coast in Africa also to the British. But this time for a bit more money, since it did it for £10,000, or nowadays $1 million, which is still relatively little, especially when looking at the later examples I'm about to give. But first, a bit about the Danish Gold Coast. It is very important to mention that these are the territories of present-day Ghana, and this colony was used very much in gold mining, since there was a lot of gold in Ghana, but mostly for taking slaves, since Denmark sadly was very much engaged in the international slave market. Denmark actually entered the transatlantic slave trade in the late 17th century, becoming the first nation to officially legalize it in 1671. I don't know why I laughed, it's not funny. This was primarily through the Danish West India Company, and Denmark, like I said, was very much engaged in slavery of black people. It is not something Danish people are proud about. Luckily, it was abolished in 1848 in Danish colonies, and we can't forget as Danish people that Denmark did gain a lot of wealth because of the slave trade it engaged in. But moving on from Ghana, just 18 years later, after Denmark officially abandoned its ambitions in Africa, it abandoned the Nicobar Islands, which is basically some islands that are in between Malaysia and Indonesia and India in that general region. And it didn't sell this island, instead it just abandoned it, and later the British just took it for themselves. But why did Denmark abandon this island? It seems like it's at least should have some strategic value. Well, Denmark, in its pragmatic mind, just lacked the resources to hold this colony. And the consequences of this was that the British basically consolidated all the power in the region. Now, probably the most famous example of Denmark selling its territories, that being the Danish West Indies, or, a bit of a spoiler alert, nowadays known as the US Virgin Islands. The US Virgin Islands, or the Danish West Indies, was a crucial point for sugar production and trade, and this was a very valuable territory for Denmark, so why would they sell this to the US? They sold this island in 1917, and that might give the answer to you, since like you probably know, in 1917, that was the year where World War I was happening. So Germany, being in a lot of pressure because of World War I, decided to sell this island to the US for $25 million in gold in that time. Or nowadays, $350 million nowadays. And because of all these sales and losses, Denmark was basically lost with its northern territories, or the territories near the Arctic Circle. There were never any real propositions to buy Iceland. However, there were many propositions to buy Greenland, one of which you might have heard from very recently. So in 1867, around the time when the United States bought Alaska from Russia for a pathetic amount of money, there was an informal interest in acquiring also Greenland as part of expanding American territory. And honestly, I don't see this as some very far alternative history. This could have definitely happened. However, the American interest in Greenland never stopped, since the Arctic is an extremely vital place in the defense of NATO. Greenland, being almost fully in the Arctic Circle, it's extremely tactical for the defense of NATO, especially during the Cold War, where NATO and the West was extremely scared of the Soviet Union. So America built many bases in Greenland, which kind of revised the economy of Greenland actually, and many of these bases are still there in Denmark, either abandoned or some of them still active. And finally, in 2019, President Donald Trump publicly expressed interest in purchasing Greenland from Denmark. But this was promptly dismissed by the Danish and Greenlandic officials. And this is one of the places where actually I'm a bit confused why the West and Danish people were so shocked from this proposal. They acted like it is extremely outrageous. How could Trump even suggest such a thing? When the West was kind of forgetting that America has been proposing and buying territories from Denmark for a very long time. So this is one of the few instances where Trump wasn't totally crazy. Anyway, what do you think about Danish mentality towards colonialism? How is it different from others' mentality towards colonialism? Don't forget to subscribe and check out the history playlist for more history videos. And as always, farvel, żegnam, and goodbye.